Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Tom, Moto-Resto LLC, Braden, Florida. If this is your first time here, welcome. Otherwise, welcome back. Today we're going to cover how to navigate parts fiches online. Sometimes can be rather confusing, and it's just not terribly difficult, but it requires familiarity with essentially how manufacturers lay out their parts on their respective fiches. And I'm going to be covering the Japanese brands primarily, which is, Yamaha, Kawasaki, Suzuki, Honda. But this will translate to like even lawnmowers or Polaris ATVs and things like that. So it's not terribly difficult to do, but again, like anything else, you need to learn how to do it and kind of get familiar with it and do it a few times, then it's really going to be a breeze for you. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I think there's three reasons that you can utilize parts fiches for your benefit. Of course, one is simply ordering parts. That's pretty straightforward. The other one is to see how things are put together, because sometimes service data, exploded views and things like that are not all that clear if you have them at all. The older service manuals are kind of funky, especially online, that have been scanned 1,000 times. And the third reason is to find something via like a cross-reference. So the unit you're working on, whether it's a bike or an ATV or something, you're looking for a particular component and it's not shown because it's part of a big assembly in that particular year, and you figured that maybe other years or other brands even use a similar part. Brakes are one example. A lot of them are the same size as far as the pistons go, ergo the piston packing is. So, things like that it can be used for. So I'm going to concentrate on those three examples. You probably noticed I'm on the Partzilla website, and I'm going to bounce around to a couple of the ones that I know of at least. I just use Partzilla more than any others. I'm not recommending any one parts seller, online seller or otherwise, over the other. I just want to show you the differences in how their websites are set up for looking up parts. So the first scenario is simply ordering parts. It's pretty simple, but sometimes these drawings can be a little bit confusing. Let's look at Kawasaki, for example. And when you click on a brand like up here, it's the same thing with all the other selections as well. You get a category because manufacturers make ATVs, generators. Not all of them do, but this one does. Jet skis and so forth. So if we want to go to motorcycle, and let's pick my 12 Concourse 14, and take a look at a drawing for, let's say, the upper cowling, which is the bodywork. And you see that drawing is like, oh my God, how do I read this thing? Well, it's pretty simple actually. For even on a complicated drawing like this, which is, I could say, more of a busy drawing, first thing you look at is the reference to the direction of the front of the motorcycle or ATV or whatever you're working on. This is really important because, you're looking at the thing you're working on, right? You already have an example right there. Now you're looking at parts for it, and then they're simply in an exploded view. So you want a reference. So this is the front, so you're looking backwards that way if you were standing in front of the bike. And so you can find the cowling, you can find, the instrument, the headlights rather, you can find a mirror, on that particular bike you're working on, and then kind of look around and go, well, which one of these things is the thing I need? Is it a push nail, like a plastic push nail, or is it an actual screw or a bolt or something? And once you figure that out, even on a complicated or busy drawing like this, the next thing is to simply reference the number that identifies it to the number over here in the list. Now, Kawasaki, and I'm not sure about the other ones, but Kawasaki for sure likes to use it's essentially a 5-digit part number dash 3-digit. Now, you don't see the dash 3-digit up here. You simply see the 5-digit first part of the hyphenated part number. So let's take this 92039 here for example. If we wanted that, I'm not really sure what it is, but we'll take a look. 92039, we screw down here. It's one of those push nails, or they call them rivets, those plastic deals that always break when you try to either take them out or put them in. Now, if you needed those, it'd be pretty simple just to order them, or if you wanted just the part number because you want to check your dealer, you can open that up and look right here, and here's the actual part number. This is actually a -4, some are -3 as far as the number. So 92039 0048. If you called your local Kawasaki dealer and you gave them that part number in its entirety, they would be looking at the same thing. Because one thing to understand here is that the OEM parts fiches are all the same from no matter what place you're looking them up online. So if it's motorsport.com or Bike Bandit or whatever, they're all referencing the same material. And most of them have a drill down list like this up here, where when you open it up, and let's start back at the main screen just to show you how that builds. When you open it up and you hit Kawasaki, you see how it starts. Catalog, Kawasaki, motorcycle, there it is. And then we go to, let's say, again, 2012, and then to the Concourse 14. It expands out. And the reason why this is important is if you're like, okay, let me go into here, front brake, and then you go, oh crap, I didn't want this one. You don't necessarily have to go and hit the back button. You can if you want, but all you have to do is go up here and hit the bike again, and it brings you right back to that level. I guess it would be called levels. So then you can scroll around and look at different things. And so we'll look at one more here. Let's look at the rear brake. So if you needed brake packing, again, look up whatever parts you need. Here's again that front reference. And so there you go. And then you can pick what you want. Another thing to keep in mind is on most of these parts fiches, they will give you a quantity that the OEM says is required for whatever this part applies in this assembly, all right, or this fiche. In this case, 2 right there, that you will need for this, this assembly here. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And then adding it to the cart and doing all that stuff is sometimes unique to the particular website, but you can figure that out. We're going to go over to motosport.com and take a look at how theirs is set up. Now, theirs is a little different, and I have a little experience with this one. I think the best thing to do is just follow this drill down up here. You can go through this way too, but if you just go to select riding style and say street bike, and then let's say Honda, and then let's say a 2002, there it is. My eyes are screwed up here today. And let's look at CB250 Nighthawk, doesn't matter. Okay, so now you get that populated in here, and it shows you 2 choices right there, aftermarket and OEM. So if you want aftermarket, that's fine. The aftermarket will be almost exclusively unique to whatever they're selling versus the other ones. But OEM, again, it's the same information, same part by part number. So then this brings you into a smaller, I should say, list, a sub-list of all those in the 2002 Honda motorcycle lineup that they have parts for. And let's go to ST1100, the sport touring bike, instead of doing the other one. So that's pretty good. Now, this is a pretty damn busy parts fiche right here. Look at this thing. So this is your carburetor assembly. Holy cow. Now, this looks a little wacko with all these blue squares, but it's actually pretty cool how they do this. So if we zoom up and we look around, and again, let's zoom back out and make sure that we do have a reference. Whoops. Yeah, see it down there. Front. There's the front reference. So there's the front of the bike, and this is what we're looking at for the reference for what you're trying to buy. All right, so if we needed, whatever you need on this list, let's say it's, when you highlight that and click on it, it brings it up. Now, it's currently unavailable, but it tells you what it is. It's a MEM 6x22 panhead screw. Honda's pretty good about that. They will give you the size of the fasteners, which if you need to source it elsewhere, that's critical information. So basically, you can also scroll down here and see the same thing. And as you notice, these reference just 1 or 2 digit part numbers, as opposed to that 5-digit slash, -3 or 4 digit that Kawasaki does. So like, for example, 43, so forth, 65. Let's see what 65 is if we go down here on the list. I don't even know. I've never been in this fiche before, but it just looked good. Nice bike, by the way, ST. So this is a clip for a tube. They have it in stock. And we click on it, and they don't have a picture of it, but they do give you the Honda part number. This is definitely what a Honda OEM label would look like. In fact, it would come in a bag that has this exact label on it. So, unless it's a box, like for something big. So that's pretty straightforward too. It all depends on the complexity of the parts fiche. So let's go down here back. We're going to go just back to main Honda and start over. And as you can see, every website does it a little differently. And again, Motorsport, you can get to the same place just multiple ways. So here's an entire list of everything that they have, all the way down to whatever year they're covering as far as the Honda parts availability. I'm going to tell you one other thing about that over on the Partzilla site. Don't let me forget. But let's go up here and we'll go to the. I just saw one I want to look at, which will be pretty, I think, entertaining for you. Let's take a look at this 2020 Honda Grom, little kind of mini bike. And again, it gives you the same thing with a bunch of pictures. And all you do is just select the system that you're looking for or the assembly you're looking for. And if you need like fuel tank parts, then you'd go over here. And it's a little simpler of a parts fiche to navigate through. But as you can see, this is a fuel injected bike, so it has a fuel pump. And then it has all the associated stuff about that. So again, just buying parts, straightforward, pretty much the same as the other websites that you can go to. And again, it lists a number of items that should be required on that particular thing. So nut flanges, 5 of them, so forth. All right, so that's pretty straightforward stuff. I'm going to go back to Partzilla, and I want to show you that one thing about Honda in particular. I don't know about the other brands. But let's say you're working on a really old antique Honda, like in the early 70s, for example, or something, that may be a little bit unusual or before 1974. You see the selection right here. It says models with no year. This is going to be your best friend if you got something like that. Because you click on that, and then you have all these models that are not necessarily assigned to a year in their system. In other words, you don't look them up by year, you look them up by model. So if you wanted to look up a CL77, you click on that, and it will give you that bike. Now, you have to ask yourself, well, does that year on my machine correspond with this particular parts fiche? Maybe, maybe not. And that's where a little bit of detective work comes in, where if you're trying to find OEM parts and you're using this particular feature on their website, you're going to have to essentially look through it and see if things apply directly to what your bike is or bike has. Because there are different variations even mid-year that they make changes of. But even then, and this is probably a bad example, but if you were in a different bike, because there's only one CL77A listed here, if you're in a different bike like a CL70 and you clicked on one of these and it didn't quite match up, you just click one of the other choices here. You see you have a K1, K2, and K3. So again, that's part of your detective work. You have to look around and say, what model do I have? Do I have multiple choices in that particular model? And if you do, then you pick the one that matches your particular unit that you have in front of you the most exact. That's pretty much the simple explanation. Now, of course, down here at the CTs, that's a little different. You do have a lot more choice on the CTs than in the CL, and that may be because they only made that in one variation or one model. But down here we can go to the CTs and see there's a whole list of them here. So that would really apply here. So if we went to this one versus that one, and you just didn't see what you exactly have, because things change again between years, even with the same model, you just pick the right one, and once you hit that one, you're in where you need to be, and then just get your parts. So if we wanted to look up air cleaner stuff for that particular bike, and you were like, well, I need parts for my air cleaner, this is where we would look. They even have a toolkit. Good luck getting that. And then this is where you'd go for that. So what is number 6? This is Element Air Cleaner. It's currently unavailable, at least in new. But let's say you really wanted to get one, and it's in the aftermarket. You didn't know where to look. What you can do is you can click on that, take this number, and then Google it, and then sure to find somebody that sells it, in the aftermarket. And usually they reference the OEM part number for that purpose. All right, so pretty simple stuff. All right, so that about covers the buying of stuff straightforward, that particular segment. Now let's look into using it as a mechanism to see how things are put together. Pretty much same thing, but you're a little bit more targeted. Let me give you an example of this. If I go to Kawasaki, I was just working on a 78 Z1R, and I had to figure out something in regards to the steering head. And so this is another nuance of operating in parts fiches. You got to kind of figure out which parts fiche within that model that's something that you're looking for lies. So we'll go ahead and get into the Z1R here if I can find it again. There she is, Z1R, the KZ1000 D1. I was looking up a steering head thing. I wanted to see how something was put together before I drove off a bearing off the steering stem, because we're going to be replacing those. This is a fairly extensive restoration that we're starting right now for a customer. And so I was thinking to myself, sometimes that's in handlebars, sometimes that's in forks, sometimes that's even in like frame. So I took a guess and I said, let me think, I bet you it's in front fork. So I looked at the 78, which is a D1, clicked it, and sure as heck, there it was. So that's one of, I guess that's a killing two birds with one stone here, is to explain that you have to figure out where they chose to put it. And it's sometimes kind of weird where they chose to put a particular part in a fiche. Like, for example, on the magnet that I have, if you're looking up rectifier regulator, it's in the side cover / rectifier diagram. Now you'd think that'd be in an electrical diagram or something else, but nope. It's just where they decided to put it in this particular drawing. But in this case, I guessed, and I was right, that the steering stem is with the forks. So I was essentially looking up how this was put together here to make sure I wasn't going to foul anything up. But so again, this is what we can use it for. We can look to see how things go together. We can look to see how things are put together before we take them apart. And especially with these forks that are a little bit funky, service manuals are usually pretty good, I have to admit, about fork disassembly exploded views, but not always. So that's just another thing you can use these parts fiches for. All right, so let's look at the third example of utilizing this to find something under either a cross-reference or it's not available as a separated or exploded out part on your particular bike, and you're going to try to find it elsewhere. Here's the first example I want to give you. I don't know if I'll get into the other one or not because that's a little more complicated, but let's use my Concourse 14 again. I was going to replace a fuel filter, which is integrated into the fuel pump on that bike a few years ago, about 2 years ago. And so I went into this fiche and I clicked fuel pump, and this would be the same on any parts sites, not just Partzilla. Remember, it's OEM parts. Whoops, let's go here. Flipping around. And as you can see, you have a fuel pump, and the only thing that's broken out on the fuel pump essentially is this O-ring, this big O-ring, all right there. Does not have any fuel filter broke out, or this bolt here I guess you can get, but you'd essentially say to yourself, wait a minute, I got to buy an entire fuel pump. Sign into, when it says sign in to see price, it's expensive, all right? It's kind of like if you have to ask, you can't afford it, that kind of thing, if you're buying a boat or something. So I thought to myself, there's got to be another way to do this. So this is what you can end up doing in this situation. We're going to go back to motorcycle, and instead of going to 2012, I'm going to go to 2016, and I'm going to click the ZG 1400 or ZG 14, the Concourse 14 again. And then I'm going to go to fuel pump on that. And if I zoom up and go, well, let me get down there first, and go voila, look what we have. That's not a misprint. They just use 5 9s and whatever the after 3 or 4 is. So here we go. Look at this. Kit fuel filter. Now, there is absolutely zero difference between the fuel pump on a 16 as opposed to a 12. They just decided on the 16 to break this out into a separate a part that you can buy. That's exactly what I did. I ordered the fuel filter kit. It came with all the O-rings and everything, and I installed it. It worked perfect. So that's one quick example of how you can look around and figure out, and you know, forums can help, and Facebook groups on your bike can help too, because somebody may actually say, hey, look, don't go to a 12, go to a 16, and you can find it. Oh yeah, there you go. So basically, that's just another example of what you can use this for. I'll show you one other quick thing, and that's aftermarket mainly, not necessarily aftermarket, but not necessarily OEM parts either. And I like to use Bike Bandit for things like tires. And the reason why is I think they have a really good engine for looking through and getting your tires. So if you needed a set of tires, it's really pretty easy to do. On one of the easiest websites I've ever found to do that. So if you wanted to get sport bike tires, for example, you can go in here, and I really like this layout because if you look on the left side here, they give you brand, rim size, front and rear, suggested use, tube or tubeless, and all these different selections. And this is the big one right here, is your tire size. So you can scroll down, and you know, you want a 190 50 or 190 50 17 then you click on that. It gives you all the 190 50 17s, and then you can go through and pick the one you want. I do like Bike Bandit for picking up, looking through their tires. I think they just have one of the better websites for looking for them and figuring out, which one you want. In other words, you don't have to drill down so far, and it's kind of frustrating when you got to click 18 times to get to a particular tire. And this one, clearly, you do not have to do that. Okay, that's all, folks. I'm going to try to edit this down into a reasonable amount, but there's just a lot of material to cover here, so I hope it's not too long for you. But this is something that you need to do on a regular basis if you're unfamiliar with the fiches, and you get familiar with it just like a doctor gets familiar with reading an echocardiogram or other type of, a radiologist knows how to read an X-ray. You can learn how to read these and be very proficient in it as well. So again, hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next video.